Hello, everybody. Welcome to Brunch with Bigfoot, Michigan Rob. Of course, I am BMR. How is everybody this fine Thursday afternoon? Thanks for coming in. Right before the show started, I hit the exit this button. I had to reboot the computer. Well, got through that pretty quickly. So thank you for coming in. Got a great guest tonight or this afternoon. Ryan Edwards joins us. He's an author, cryptozoologist. He's very up and coming guy. He's already there. A lot of books. All his books are pinned in this show for you guys to check it out. Can't wait to get the show started. And of course, if this is your first time here, please subscribe to Bigfoot Michigan Rob on YouTube, Texas Front Porch on YouTube, and of course, the Blondes and the Booze Paranormal Podcast. And waiting backstage in Studio B is Tex. I'll be bringing Tex up shortly. You can find us at iHeartRadio and Spreaker, wherever podcasts are found. If you like our content, would help support what we do, the Super Chat is open. Great way to help support what we do. Also, you can become a BMR Pirate. That's right. You get a nice picture of me with a bandana. And a lot of you watch Texas Front Porch and the Blondes and the Booze, and they all have memberships as well. And if you join all three, you can become, as Tex coined this, so I got to give him the credit, a paranormal porch pirate. A lot of fun. There's some fun things we do around here. So thanks for coming on in. Find us on YouTube for all our about pages for all of our events and activities. And speaking of our activities, and I'm glad that I'm almost done advertising this, because I've been advertising this now. All of us have since like before Christmas. Right around the corner, June 7th and 8th, the Alabama Bigfoot Conference. The conference is the 8th. We're having a meet and greet on the 7th. Of course, Texas, the MC. Our speaker lineup includes Barton Nunnally, Daryl Denton, the Blondes and the Booze, Jason McLean, Greg Ogles, Martin Groves, and of course, yours truly. You won't find a cheaper venue. Tickets, $30 online, $35 at the door. June 7th, we're having a meet and greet at Sizzler Steakhouse. I think I finally said it right, Tex, for the first time in 7 months. But yes, check us out there. Now, it's ready. It's been booked already. The reservations are full. However, come on down anyways. We won't turn you away. Neither will the restaurant. So thank you for that. Also, briefly here, thanks for everybody for buying my book, Bigfoot Mr. Represents True Cryptids, book one, found on Amazon. When Amazon comes calling for those who bought it, please leave a review. Please leave a review. And I got to do this too really quick. It's not coming out till September, but check that out. My good buddy Tex is joining the group of authors, Infamous Minds and Notorious Crimes. Him and Daniel Diva got together on that collaboration. That'll be out sometime in the fall. And with that being said, don't forget to subscribe to Texas Front Porch on YouTube. Mondays, 8 to 11 starts out with Daniel Diva. Tuesdays, Beyond BMR, 9 o'clock with Krista. Wednesdays, Bartonelli in Humanoids, 9 in the East. Thursday, Brunch with Bigfoot Michigan Rob at 1 o'clock in the East. Thursday night at 9, the Blondes and the Booze Paranormal Podcast. Please subscribe. And then after that, I think at 11 it is on Texas Front Porch. We've got Monica Rollins, and that show is called Our Paranormal World. Check her out. Check us all out. Fridays, you're back with the Blondes and the Booze at 8. Sunday, Truth or Tinfoil, 6 o'clock in the East with Randy and Brandy. That's their own channel. Check them out. Subscribe. And then you get Text one more time to close out Sundays with Infamous Minds, 7 o'clock in the East with, of course, Danielle. So, got all that out of the way. And I'm going to bring up my main man from Texas.
Howdy.
What's up, Tex? How you doing? Howdy, partner.
Doing good, man. Doing good. Yeah, I'm excited about this new book coming out. We was hoping it'd be out this month, but we hit some snags. So we're looking at September before it comes out. So,
well, congratulations early for you on that. I know you're excited about that. I was excited too when I very first did mine, and I was like, wow, then you get your book, your name's on it. You're all like, wow, proud of yourself, and it's quite an event, quite an achievement. And speaking of books, I mean, we got a kid. I have my second book out in July. This guy, young guy, early 20s. I think he's written I'll let
Third
8
book.
books. I mean, he's got a third book coming out, but he's got like 8 links that I provided for everybody to go check out when the show's over. And I'm gonna and guys will be coming down at the conference with us
Mm-hmm.
from Texas, right? I believe he's from
Yep.
Texas.
San Antonio.
I'm gonna bring him up right now. Ryan Edwards.
Hey guys,
Hey,
pleasure to
man.
be here.
Hey, great to see you again, Ryan. Excuse me.
Of course, it's always good to be with you guys and see you guys, even if it's not in person.
Right. Thanks,
Right.
Keith, for that right out the get go. Thank you, Keith, for that awesome super chat. Take my money and like it. Yes, I will take it. Thank you so much. Thanks, buddy. Keith from Oakland County, Michigan, a new subscriber for about a month now, and he's already been sending me loads of emails. We got to talk to Keith. He's got some creepy dogman activity where he lives, so we'll get. I'm sure. Yeah, so we'll begin with Keith here in the future. Thank you so much, Keith. So yeah, we'll get right into it because we got a lot to talk about, with your experiences, and if you want to just brush over a little bit about yourself. I know most people know you, but there's always new people that join our channels. So why don't you give us a brief background about yourself, Ryan?
Of course. Well, a little about myself, especially for the people that are new here. My name is Ryan Edwards. I'm from San Antonio, Texas. Currently 23 years old. Got my first book published back when I was 20. Got my second one published earlier this year. First book is Cryptids of the World. It's kind of a modern day bestiary, an encyclopedia of different cryptids seen around the world. My second book is called Sasquatch: A Prehistory, the evolutionary origins of Sasquatch, how it could be what we call an evolutionary anachronism. It correlates to the fossil record. And now my new book I'm trying to get out right now, hopefully later this year, is Beyond Bigfoot, the other unrecognized primates in North America. Things like the gugweed, the napes, and devil monkey. Pretty much it's my goal to try to bring in a mixture of the scientific and the superstition, of the logical and illogical in cryptozoology, because I see cryptozoology as truly a science, and I try to bring in that more logical side, but also we're hunting monsters. Why not also have fun at the same time?
I hear that. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to and you've been out in the field with us. I mean, firsthand this stuff's out there.
Yes.
You know, um, it was Ryan's been out to Brown Springs with us. He knows what kind of area that is out there. They had some vocals and stuff when y'all were walking around.
Yes.
And yeah.
So is that your first taste of actual some sort of evidence vocals, or have you seen shadows of the Bigfoot or any of these cryptids yourself, or come across anything during your short time really doing all this?
Well, that was my first ever a real field investigation because with me, I look at a lot of the eyewitness accounts, historical reports, eyewitness testimonies, but really field research, I'll be honest, I'm lacking in because pretty much I'm a full-time educator and I'm also writing and all that. I don't have that much time. But that was the first time really being in the field and the first time really experiencing anything cryptozoological, possibly cryptozoological. I always say I've heard vocals, but doesn't necessarily mean it's from a Sasquatch or a dogman, whatever. I try to leave Bigfoot and cryptids as my last possible option. But with what I heard, it did sound very much akin to what we hear when it comes to like Sasquatch vocalizations. It sounded primate-like, and me and our good friend Nick were walking down this little trail at night, and we heard way in the distance like a howl. It didn't sound like canine; it sounded primate-like. And I'm like, okay, that was interesting. We both looked at each other like, you heard that, right? And the same night, I know you guys heard, I think, vocalizations down at the camp
Mm-hmm.
and stuff like that. So it's a possibility.
It is definitely a possibility. That was the same weekend that me and Nick got there early, and we had stuff walking around our camp, and something took a sizable branch out of our fire wood stack and chunked it over by my tent.
Yeah.
So yeah, there was a lot of activity that weekend for sure. That was also was that the same weekend? Yeah, that was the fish fry, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that was the same weekend that Brandy had her first sighting up there in the that was an active weekend,
That
because
really was.
we had that first sight. Me and Brandy had her first sighting up there in the cemetery. We caught that odd thermal. Nick recorded that odd thermal up there with that orange black heat thing. That we don't know what it is. We didn't just see it with our naked eye. We caught it on thermal. We got bluff charged and everything. I mean, it was a very active weekend.
Yes. And I appreciate going out there because I was like, it's my real first taste of like field research. And that's what I'm willing to try to get into more is the field aspects of it because without going in the field and getting that data and that field evidence, how can we ever discover these species?
Right. And I take my hat off to you and Nick and A Rod. We call him A Rod, but y'all are all about the same age, and it's really good to see. Y'all young folks, taking up the. We're kind of passing the baton because I'm not a spring chicken. I'm not going to be around forever. I'm only going to live to 124. So, but it's nice to see somebody with the passion that we've got, and not only that, it's like you said earlier, you're your own worst skeptic, and you have to be because you can't go out there and say, every little thing you see or hear is Bigfoot, and that's the approach you take, and I love it.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, and I do find it refreshing too. And I think we've talked about this almost ad nauseum, almost maybe it's a point of embarrassment for you, Ryan. So every time I see him, we talk about this. I really love the younger guys. When I'm talking younger, you guys are in your 20s, early mid 20s. I'm guessing, or I think I remember that.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you guys bring a different set of theories or ideas and possibilities to the table. I'm not going to rag on anybody in the field at all, but these people that are all still closed minded a little bit, to just have one way of thinking totally. With your way of thinking, you combine the science and the superstition or the legend behind it. So you kind of combine it, and your mind is probably, I'm guessing, open to all the possibilities, like the what if factor.
Yes, like I always bring up. Okay, if we want to bring it up, like I bring up like astrophysics, Schrodinger's cat. Until it is proven and measured, it can be anything. Like with me, with like Sasquatch and cryptids, most of them I believe, at least with my evidence, that they are flesh and blood. But until we discover them, they can be anything. They can be flesh and blood. They can be spirits. They can be extraterrestrial. They can be ultra dimensional. We don't know until they are proven and through scientific means. They can be anything. I go after the more physical, more like flesh and blood. These are living, breathing species, but that doesn't necessarily mean they will be. So like I try to bring in all types of perspectives, and even like being the like next generation, like text, like at the FOW conference. How many times when people say, "Oh, this is the next generation of cryptozoologists," and I'm like, "Please don't put that on me, guys." Like I already have enough stress already, but I try to bring in a new perspective. And one thing I try to bring in too is older perspectives. I look at researchers like John Napier, John Green, uh, Bernard Hoovermans, and bring in like their perspectives as well because I feel like we've kind of lost track of like the origins of cryptozoology, like the first like real headliners of this. I try to bring in their perspectives too to kind of be like, okay, let's look at everything, see what we can learn from this field, because, like for instance, Sasquatch. Everyone brings up we've been looking for this animal for 50, 60 years, and we haven't had a better video from it since the Patsy Gimlin film, and that was made in '67. Well, okay, what can we learn from the field that we've been messing up so far, and how can we bring in new techniques to help kind of hopefully discover this creature within my lifetime and your lifetimes as well. But even if it doesn't, I bring up the ideas of the timeline of discovery. For instance, the gorilla was talked about for hundreds of years before it was ever discovered. So
Yep.
was the giant panda. So even the platypus was bring up for several decades before it was truly discovered. So the timeline of discovery on Sasquatch is still there. We aren't close to discovering it yet, but one day it will happen. And hopefully with people like us, that discovery will occur.
You think
That's
we
a
are?
great outlook on
I like
stuff. And
yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's I I can't. I keep going back. It's so refreshing. I mean, because and when you got fresh eyes on stuff, that helps. You know,
Yes.
and it's like, BMR was saying, when you look at stuff at a different perspective, because the older guys like myself, even it's hard not to put that, not to end up with a set of blinders or rose colored glasses on when you're looking at this stuff. And when you have somebody that's younger and has a fresh perspective, I think that's the way we're going to advance. Like you said, we're going to advance this research and have a good chance of getting disclosure in my lifetime or yours. So
Yes, like I believe like with new perspectives, new eyes on it. Like that's why like when I go to like these conferences and go to events, I bring up like no, I'm trying to bring in the historical, like of
yep,
course, same viewpoints as a lot of other people, but also how can new minds help with something? Like
right,
there's been times where like a bunch of college students are looking at a algorithm or looking at an equation, and they're like, we can't get this. Then someone comes in, it's five, because
right.
that one new set of eyes looked at it totally differently and gave them a whole new perspective. Like that's why I think with cryptozoology and just the paranormal field in general, we have to have multiple viewpoints. If we have just one echo chamber of the same ideas, you'll never look what's outside that echo chamber, what's outside that box.
And you've got a replica of a Gigantopithecus skull, and I and here's just my thoughts on Gigantopithecus. I think it was them. They found a way to say yes, a 10-foot primate existed without saying, yeah, it's Bigfoot. Okay, it gave them an out, and it also gave them an avenue to go when disclosure does happen. That take the credit for, see, we've already identified. So I do think the Gigantopithecus was actually a Bigfoot. They're just not coming off that information yet. That's just my opinion.
But it is possible. Like, for instance, I've looked at, like, in my current book, Sasquatch Prehistory, I have several candidates for Sasquatch. And I do bring up Giganto myself. Me, in my personal opinion, I don't think it does correlate to Sasquatch as much. It does correlate with the size, but
Right.
behaviorally, ecologically, and all that, I don't think it would match with Sasquatch because how I see with Bigfoot, especially, the origins of it are either two things: either it's something that's very much that was Bigfoot-like that came to North America recently, or something very non-Bigfoot-like that's become Sasquatch but came here a lot older. In
Right.
my opinion, if you look at the anatomy of Sasquatch that we can think of from like the footprints, the handprints, all that, it looks like it's pretty much evolved for North America, and most likely it came here in the past. I would say 20, maybe 20,000 years, maybe more like maybe a couple million, maybe a million years, because it looks like it's adapted for this environment. Doesn't look like it's adapted for Africa. It doesn't look like it's adapted for Europe or Asia. It's adapted for North America. And of course, North America doesn't have any indigenous primates. We did have
Right.
primates at one time, but that was during the Paleocene. That was 30 to 40 million years ago. It's not like those primates are still around, and if they are, maybe that's what we call devil monkeys nowadays. But I won't get into that. So I believe something that was very non-Bigfoot like moved into North America during our prehistory, and then adapted to become what we now know as Sasquatch. Because it looks like, at least behaviorally, ecologically, and physiologically, it's adapted for North America, not any other environment other than here, like Asia or Europe.
Do you think that, in your opinion, research you've done, do you think that perhaps Sasquatch evolved from an ape or an indigenous person?
With me, I believe it's a hominid, not a hominin. Hominins are human. Hominids are all non-human primates, like gorillas, orangutans, pongoids, all that. Because if you look at Sasquatch, yes, physiologically it looks very human, but if you look at it ecologically, you look at it behaviorally, it's very non-human. For instance, one thing I always bring up is the hands. If you look at Sasquatch handprints, the thumb is distally placed. It's down here on the hand. That's a very non-human trait to have. All humans have a very robust thumb. We have a opposable thumb. With all Sasquatch handprints we have, the muscles here are not as built up as humans. Their thumb's not as moldable as ours. They don't have precision grip, and with a lack of precision grip, that also causes us not to have tools. As long as hominins have been around, there is a correlating fossil record of tools. Homo erectus had tools. Homo habilis, Homo naledi. Humans, we have tools right here. So, but Sasquatch aren't really seen using tools, and there's no really correlating facts of them using like spears or anything like that. Maybe very things like sticks, rocks, things like that, but nothing as pronounced as hominin tools. They don't use fire. They might be sociable, but all primates are sociable.
Right.
One thing people always bring up is like, oh, it's human because look at the footprints. That's a human foot. Yes, it is very humanoid, but it's not exactly human. Look
Hmm.
at the lack of the transversal arch. Look at the metatarsal break. Metatarsal break is a very non-human trait. So for me, I think Sasquatch correlates to more non-human primate, something more akin to a Dryopithecine than anything that's humanoid. No, because like I bring a Paranthropus, it's a humanoid, but it came off our own lineage about 2 million years ago. I think that could correlate to Sasquatch, but the only reason I don't think it is because it's too small and it's too recent for Sasquatch.
I got something to show you. I don't know if Tex I showed you this because you bring. I like how you bring up the placement of the thumb, and this is one of Tex's most prized pieces of evidence.
Yes, the handprint you guys got in Brown Springs,
Mm.
correct?
Yep.
Yes. Like me and you have looked at this multiple times, and if you look at that thumb, it's very much placed distally away from the fingers.
Yep.
That's a very non-human trait. And if we look at the Sasquatch handprints we have, like from Paul Freeman up in the Blue Mountains, that thumb is almost the exact same placement. So when I come to see that, I'm like, okay, that's not a human hand, and it's also not like a hominin hand. That shows something very much like a gorilla. And like, look at their fingers. Their fingers are very stubby, very much a little fatter than human fingers.
Mm.
So at least when it comes to like the handprints, it's funny. Sasquatch is exactly half human, half ape. Hands are very ape-like, feet are very human-like. The body is kind of like a mix of both. But one big thing that not a lot of people look at is dentition, the teeth. Every animal's dentition is very important. Like we can learn from two or three teeth on a fossil record what an animal ate and probably what it looked like. If you look at the eyewitness testimony of Sasquatch, it shows a very ape-like dentition, very prognathous molars. The molars are very large to crush, possibly even bone at times, maybe crush plants, and they don't have large fangs. Like the idea is like when you have a gorilla like come at you, those large canines. That shows a very we would call an animal that doesn't have a lot of battle interpacific combat. gorillas, for instance, have large canines because the silverbacks fight each other to assert dominance. Humans, we don't have large canines because we don't need that. We don't have inter-Pacific combat like how other primates do. So the dentition also suggests it's an omnivore. A lot of people say, well, Bigfoot could eat mostly, maybe eats a lot of plants. Yes, but also the dentition, the incisors, especially the size of them that people see. Like I have heard eyewitness testimony, like children have said, like, oh, the when it was grinning at me, it had like Lincoln log teeth because very square teeth like humans. That's a very hominid trait to have teeth like that. So like I try to look at all aspects of the Sasquatch, not just feet, not just hands, not just not just the hair or whatever. You have to look at it the whole thing. Like what our friend Jason McLean says, you have to have all the pieces of the puzzle in order to find what it is.
Yep. So what do you think about the DNA studies that they've done on it?
What the DNA says, I know some of the DNA studies have said like it's part human, which it is a possibility that maybe early on in the lineage, maybe there has been possible crossbreeding between hominids, humans, and Sasquatch. Think of stories of like Native American tribes have talked about women being abducted by Sasquatch and being pulled into the hills. But also, interesting fact there too, a lot of indigenous tribes in Africa reference gorillas grabbing women and going off into the jungle, in which we now know does not happen. Think of King Kong. What does King Kong do? Grab a female and go run off into the woods. One of the first sculptures ever made of a gorilla here in America was showing a gorilla grabbing a young lady and running off into the woods. We now know gorillas don't do that. Even some Native American stories talked about wolves grabbing women and running off to the woods because they think we came for wolves. So maybe some of these stories have been kind of more blown out of proportion. Maybe they are like can be used for like modern day boogeyman tales. The Tlingit up in Alaska, they talk about the Kushtaka. If you go into the woods, the land otter man, the Kushtaka would take you. Down in Vancouver Island, they talk about the Oma. They talk about all these. The basket woman will come and grab you, put it in her basket, and will walk away with you. So you have to look at some of these old traditions and say, okay, yes, they are referencing something, but they might also be putting their own twist on it. So I believe there could be possible human DNA within Sasquatch, but I don't think that would make it completely human. Because even like I've brought up with people in the past, we discover Sasquatch tomorrow. They finally say it's real. What do we do then? If it's human, does it have rights? Does it have human rights? If it's non-human, what do we do to protect it? Uh, I've even made the jokes about with people before, like, okay, if we discover human, like that Sasquatch is some type of human species, a bunch of preachers are going to go out in the woods and try to save Sasquatch now. Do they have a soul now? Is that going to be a whole new thing if we discover Bigfoot? But there's a lot of aspects to it that we haven't even gotten to that bridge yet to really, we can only really speculate on. But that's kind of a job of cryptozoologists. I like to say cryptozoology is a science of speculation.
I wonder if they'll vote for the Green Party.
Probably be like, hey guys, we got some new voters out there. Let's go get them.
Well, some states even have Sasquatch as a species of animal because I think what is it in the Pacific Northwest? Isn't that true, Tex? That they made it endangered species. You can't hunt them or something.
Yeah. There's laws in some states that you can't harm them or you can't hunt them or stuff like that, and they have been listed on. I believe it was Washington, wasn't it, Ryan, where they had it on a pamphlet in 1973.
Yes, and even like Marion County, Texas, up where Jefferson, Texas is, they've even put on a protection for Sasquatch and what they call non-human primates that are indigenous to Texas.
It is well, and I'm of the opinion that Roosevelt did set aside the national parks for these things to give them some areas so we wouldn't have maybe not no run-ins, but it would lower the possibility, which it has.
Yes.
I think it served its purpose.
Yeah.
But I mean, you've got too many prominent and very, very credible people that have seen this thing, have run into it. Daniel Boone, Davy Crockett, Theodore Roosevelt. The list goes on, and it's well, it's like the old adage: where there's smoke, there's fire.
Yes.
We may not know what it is, but there is something out there.
Yes. Like I've even heard a theory of like the missing 411 phenomena. Like with people going missing, maybe some of these national parks have been made in order to protect that, to keep people away. Like It's an interesting fact that Yellowstone National Park, there's a particular area in Yellowstone National Park, I think it's a couple square miles. No one can enter it. Not even park officials can enter those couple square miles. Not even the U.S. military can enter it. So it's like, well, why is that? And why don't they give an explanation? Like, I think the biggest thing with a lot of these conspiracies and things like that, why don't they give the explanation? Like, or even if they do, why is it kind of like a half explanation and it really doesn't show anything? And
Well, that's kind of the same mystery as we got with Antarctica.
Yeah.
You can't go there unless you have specific permission or whatever. It's very limited. So it opens itself to a lot of conspiracies.
Yes.
And I honestly, I believe if they just come off the damn truth and quit being so cloak and dagger about it, but they know better. As we all know, I fully trust my government, blindly follow wherever they lead us.
Yeah, we sure can trust our government when our government can't even tell the president of the United States if the UFOs are actually real, right?
Right.
He
right.
can't even access, he or she can't even access that.
Yeah.
Hey, so in your first book, I think you talked about, it's like I called it, and Tex coined the phrase some time back. It's like an encyclopedia of cryptids, right? You've got a lot of thought-provoking material in the book. What do you think, going back and taking a look at that, of all the species or possible cryptids that are in the world, what do you think frightens you the most that you would not want to come across?
Well, I think with me, it's the stuff in that book that are not cryptids. Because those things in there I reference that I do not classify as cryptids. Things like the skinwalker phenomena, the dogman phenomena, wendigos. Those are not cryptids. The wendigo, for instance, is a spirit. The skinwalker, the Yinaholushi are seen as they are people. They just practice bad medicine in the Navajo tribe. So things like that, when it comes to the more spiritual aspects, that's the stuff that really gives me the heebie-jeebies. Like a giant 9-foot tall ape that roams in the woods. Okay, I can deal with that. Oh, this thing's gonna possess me and it's not physically and I can't shoot at it. Okay, I don't like that.
Yeah.
Like when it comes to things like the Wendigo, like even a dogman phenomenon, because in my opinion, I don't think dogmen are really a physical creature. I believe it's something else because biologically it can't exist. So it's like, okay, that's something I don't even want to deal with. I can go out and look for it, of course. But if a dogman if I see one and it just disappears right in front of me, okay, cool. I'm not going to hunt that cryptid anymore. Cool. Let's go back to Bigfoot. I feel more secure with that. Let's go after a chupacabra or something like that. Something I can, if necessary, I can always shoot at if I need to.
Why do they classify? Why do they classify?
There's people out there that say Bigfoot, disappears too.
Yes.
Oh, a lot of people, way more than you think. And why do they classify?
With me, because especially here in Texas, our good friend Ken Gerhardt, he references as the Texas blue dog. That it looks like a hybridization between wolves and coyotes, but it has some type of genetic mutation that causes the hairlessness. So that in and of itself, if we find out that these Texas blue dogs can breed, if two Texas blue dogs come together and form another one, that's what we call a species. But it's not classified as a species yet. That is literally a cryptid waiting to be discovered. If we can discover that phenomenon occurring, because the one rule with hybrids is this: if a hybrid, most all hybrids cannot breed except for some mules. But if they can breed and create progeny, then they're classified as a species. So with these Texas blue dogs being seen in Texas, yes, they're hybridization and they're a mutation. But if these mutations can cause a new species to exist, then we just discovered a whole new species of canine. The chupacabra being seen down in Puerto Rico back in the 90s. I most likely think that's most likely something maybe extraterrestrial or something like that. It wasn't really something that could evolve here on Earth. It had very human, like the spines coming out of the back, bipedal, lizard-like. But even we have to look back at that phenomenon because the first woman to really talk about it, I believe it was in The Vampire de Moco. She said a couple weeks beforehand she had seen the movie Species.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at that movie, the animal in that movie, the monster, looks very similar to what she drew. So you have to not assume, but possibly speculate maybe her own perspective created her own reality. Best identification is a big thing with cryptozoology. Like even me, I'm pretty sure probably 70% of Bigfoot sightings are misidentification. But what is that 30%? That's what I really try to go after. But like a lot of these species, like for instance, I had a presentation the other day with a school about cryptozoology. How do you separate cryptids from the modern day fairy tales, modern day folklore of like the Rake, Slender Man, creepypastas? Oh, this stuff that's like on the internet. A lot of people like to say, "Oh, this is a cryptid." I'm like, no, we have to filter in what's the scientific, what's the true cryptozoology, and what's this modern day gobbledygook. Like, for instance, I always bring it up like with skinwalkers. You'll see all these people like, oh, I saw a weird looking dog. Like, okay, you tell your dog, oh, go sit down, go do this trick. My dog doesn't know tricks. That's a skinwalker. You're mixing in this modern day like folklore, this modern day culture into the history of cryptozoology. So right now, that's one big thing I try to do is separate the two. The true cryptids, the true unknown species, away from what I like to call these paracryptids. Things like the skinwalker, dogman, goatman, wendigos. All these are something probably more paranormal and not something physical.
So, what do you think about the getting off the Bigfoot subject for a little bit, Orango that type of thing, but the the phenomenon going all over the world. I guess it's not. We're staying on Bigfoot, but the how is this thing so widespread?
Well, one thing is a lot of like skeptics would say, well, this is nothing but what we call anthropomorphism. Anthropomorphism is when humans put ourselves in the woods. We're werewolves, we're hyenas, we're tigers, human-like mixtures like the centaur. But I like to counter this. Okay, if it is anthropomorphism, what is Sasquatch? It's a mix of ape and human. Why are Native Americans talking about apes? Why would they know ape-like characteristics? But I think back in the day, especially with cryptozoology, I've noticed they like to correlate all these Bigfoot-like creatures: the Yowie, the Yeti, the Tilingma, the Mandabaroon, the Sasquatch, the Mono Grande. That's all one thing. I don't think they are. When you look at the characteristics of different unknown primates seen around the world, they are a lot different from what we see as Sasquatch. They are smaller, they can have different characteristics, they have different morphologies, they have different behavioral sets. So just because something physiologically looks similar doesn't mean they're technically associated. Sharks and dolphins, hyenas and wolves. These are animals that look very similar, but are not genetically correlated at all. It's what we call convergent evolution. I think a lot of these unknown primates seen around the world are their own thing. A big example I'll bring up is the Almasty of Russia, or also known as the Chichuna. These animals, I believe, are not animals. They're probably surviving hominins. Most likely, maybe Homo neanderthalensis, the Neanderthals, or Homo denisova, the Denisovans. Boris Polchev, one of the first real Almasty researchers back in the 50s and 60s, thought these were surviving Neanderthals. And I think the same thing myself. And Tex, you brought up Orang Pendek. I believe, like the same way Ivan T. Sanderson thought, that the Orang Pendek is some type of evolved, adapted orangutan. I used to think that was maybe some like form of Homo floresiensis, the Flores man, the real life hobbits. But if you look at the foot structure of Orang Pendek, I have a footprint cast that was created by Adam Davies himself. You see a divergent big thumb. The big toe comes off the foot divergently. It's not correlated to the rest of the foot. Looks almost like a hand. If you look at modern day orangutan footprints, they're very similar. So what if maybe a population of orangutans indigenous to Sumatra learned how to become bipedal? Maybe this adaptation helped them to reach more food sources. Maybe being able to run on the ground helped them get away from predators faster. And they evolved to become what we now know as orang pendek. And that also goes in with the whole like what we call proto pygmies, these little foots being seen around the world. The orang pendek, the mandiburum of India, the Aluks of Mexico, the Duende of Central America. All these little creatures do correlate to our own even human history. Things like Homo erectus, Australopithecines. Maybe these are surviving members of our own human lineage.
Quite a bit to digest too.
Yeah.
That way in that light.
Hmm.
What were you going to say, Tex? Sorry.
I was just going to. That brings up a good point when we're shifting gears a little bit to the little people.
Yeah,
That phenomenon that has been seen. What are your thoughts on that?
With like the little people, like the almost like the little like actual people. It's very interesting because like almost every culture, if you look at it, has some stories of like little people. Like a lot of Native Americans, like a lot of Native Americans on the West Coast would say you have three types of people: humans, the big ones like Sasquatch, and the little people, and all of them would would coexist. You have the Hooden folk, the hidden folk of like Norwegian stories. You have the leprechauns of Ireland. You have the elves of Iceland. Are these actually little people, or are they maybe some type of our own lineage that has diverged off of us genetically, and then morphologically has become smaller? Maybe, but I think there is a phenomenon occurring. But what that phenomenon is, I'm not 100% sure. I mostly correlate it to something more uh, astral, something more spiritual. Because a lot of times, especially with European folklore, these little people correlate to like people going missing, or even like a lot of times with fairy culture, fairies would kill babies and put a fairy baby instead, things like that. This kind of correlates to something more spiritual occurring, something more along the lines away from cryptozoology, and something closer towards more paranormal research.
You know, it's funny you make mention of the little people being correlated with stealing of babies. We just did a show. I just did a show, a video not too long ago about the little people and from Lake Superior that they literally invaded this village of indigenous people, and their one objective wasn't to steal food or resources or weapons, but they kidnapped 3 kids out of this camp back in 2011. And I did a show on that, a video. And that was the first time, though, Ryan, that I had ever heard anything about the little people kidnapping children. Now you brought it up again, which kind of makes me thinking, because typically I've had a Robin Moonshadow on last year, and she says nothing but good things to say about them. So I think it's very interesting you bring up the missing children when little people are around. And also, I want your thoughts on that, but also, what's the difference between a little person or people and the puckwudgie? Are they different, or is that the fierce,
I
more of the fierce little person?
I think they kind of correlate primarily. I'm not the biggest expert in puckwudgies. If you want to talk to people that are good researchers, that I talk to my friend like Ryan Paul Tremblay. They like puckwudgies are more akin to like the little people, like a modern day, like kind of like a Native American version of like the leprechaun of Ireland. They're more fierce. I think they are an aspect of like the little people phenomena. Like it's interesting too, because like how can we correlate away from like the little people phenomena and the little foot phenomena? Because a lot of people bring up like seeing like a Bigfoot, but like 4 to 5 feet tall, like the orang pendek of Sumatra. I really wouldn't classify as that as a little person. That's like a little people phenomenon. I think occurred that to like more like what we call the proto pygmies, like Lauren Coleman talks about in his books, the proto pygmy phenomenon, like little ape-like creatures being seen around the world, like the orang pendek, the alux, the mandabarung, and these might be something that along our own lineage, something like the Australopithecines or Paranthropus. While like puckwudgies and all these other creatures, that's something else. I think that's more something akin to like something more spiritual.
Gotcha on that. And so you're saying, so these proto pygmies, the little people, puckwudgie, they're all different. They're different classifications. Or you think they're from the same lineage?
Possibility, yes. Like with me, when it comes to like the word cryptozoology, I try not to put stuff into like boxes, but when it comes to science, you kind of have to. Like species, like you have to like put different things in like classifications. Like when it comes to cryptids, I try to put them into classifications as much as I can, but a lot of times there's ones that come out of the box. Like if you look at like a lot of early cryptid like literature, you had like different forms of like big hairy primates, and you had proto pygmies, and you would have true giants like Lauren Coleman and Mark Hall and Patrick Hayi. They had their own like versions of like Bigfoot classifications. So I try to do that myself modern day too. Like the ideas of like, for instance, with Bigfoot, the types. Like we've probably all seen the type chart of like the 7 or 6 different types of Bigfoot. Like
Yep.
Bigfoot, ugly, all that. I try to do the same thing to an extent, but at the same time, I think a lot of these animals are just the same species, but just evolved for different environments.
So jumping totally off of the primate and all this kind of stuff, Bigfoot. Um, and here lately, I've been kind of on this kick about aquatic cryptids.
Hmm.
Can you go over a couple of them that you've researched?
Well, with me, I'll be honest, I do research aquatic cryptids to an extent, not as much as some people, because to me, some aquatic cryptids, especially with like lake monsters, the
Right.
likelihood of their existence is very much lower than a lot of other cryptids. For instance, if you come at it from like a purely biological standpoint, things like the Bear Lake monster, Cressy, I believe the one seen on like the Lake Winnepogo. A lot of these animals couldn't really exist because a lot of them, if you look at them, they're almost exact copies of the Loch Ness monster.
Right.
And there's a big thing with Loch Ness monster itself. Nessie's only been around. A lot of people bring up the St. Columba story, of course. Like St. Columba talked about an animal being in the River Ness and it had giant teeth and it ate someone. But if you really look at that story, it's not really referencing the Loch Ness monster. It's actually referencing something in the River Ness. And the River Ness connects Loch Ness to the ocean. But the actual Loch Ness, like Nessie, those sightings have only really started back in the 1920s. they don't really go back to like the 1800s or 1700s. They only really saw in the 1920s. And a lot of people say, well, most likely that's because the highway, the road that goes along the lock, only opened up at that time, so people could only start going there and seeing this animal.
Gotcha.
That's a possibility, but I bring up this hypothesis myself. The first sighting, one of the first major sightings of Nessie. I'm trying to remember when it happened and the guy's name, but I can't remember it right now off the top of my head. But he said he saw a plesiosaur-like creature with a long neck, big body, going across the road and into the water.
Right.
Now he described it: upright neck, like a snake, going like that, going into the water. If you look at it, we have to look at like the historical connotations. What also was happening? What also was the thoughts? Know what movie came out like the he saw 2 days before that sighting? He saw the first King Kong movie. In the first King Kong movie, you see a sauropod come out of the water with a neck like that, crossing like into the jungle. I'm not saying that this person misidentified Nessie or anything like that, but it's funny how those things correlate.
Right.
Like it's monsters becoming their own reality thanks to like thanks to like this cultural zeitgeist. Like I bring that up a lot with like a lot of aquatic cryptids because they bring up a lot of what we call anachronisms, like the whole surviving big. Like they bring up things that we used to think about, like plesiosaurs and mosasaurs. Like for instance, people that say, "Oh, I think I saw a surviving mosasaur," describes a flat tail, flat rounded tail. We now know that a tail fluke like a whale. No one describes that. So why are people describing an animal on what we used to think they looked like 20 years ago, and not what we not what we actually know they look like? It's like
Right.
the same phenomenon as like the surviving uh, dinosaurs. People say like, "Oh, I think I saw a velociraptor." They saw something with scales that looked like it came from Jurassic Park, not feathers, not what we would think they actually look like.
There's a great question brought up in chat. D Truth, what are your thoughts on Megalodon?
The idea of megalodon, like the idea is like megalodon still surviving. It's a possibility, but the ideas of like megalodon possibly roaming close to our own shorelines, I don't think it's likely. Because one major thing, a lot of people with cryptozoology, they forget about something that correlates to cryptozoology: ecology. What did megalodon eat? It primarily ate whales. We
Right.
don't we don't randomly see a large population of whales that's getting devastated by some unknown predator. We don't really see that in oceanography.
No, we're doing a pretty good job of that ourselves.
Yeah,
Yeah.
with our oil spills and our sonar, we do it ourselves. So
Yeah.
it's like, huh? You would think if megalodon was still existing, you would need a population, of course. That's one thing that annoys the hell out of me when people are like, "Oh, it's just one of them." It was like there's only one Bigfoot. There's only one Falk monster. No, there's a population. If megalodon was to be still alive, you usually need a couple thousand to keep a global population. We don't. I don't think there would be. We would find evidence for a couple thousand megalodons surviving in our oceans. And even when people say they see a megalodon, they see a giant white shark, like a giant
Right.
great white. And paleontologists have been looking at megalodon and have speculated they might have looked more whale-like because at the time of the oceans, it was a lot colder. They probably needed blubber. They might have had a more rounded head to help like bite into whales. So it's another example of anachronism of like people you saying what we think they look like, not what they actually look like. But it's a possibility. Like I think like the oceans are very much unexplored. So like with me, oceanic cryptids are much more likely than any type of like lake monster, like or river monster, or anything like that.
I was thinking that perhaps a megalodon maybe existed, few of them in underneath Antarctica, because it's very cold. They don't need probably to eat much. They can probably snatch a few whales and just live without eating for probably months, right? I mean, that's just my thought that's going through my head. Maybe there's not millions of them, maybe a few thousand, and maybe they're all slowly dying off. I think there's got to be a couple out there. There are just that just have been here, and if there's
Yeah.
maybe 5 in our entire bodies of the ocean that are eventually, I think that maybe that's a possibility. I
Yeah.
don't think there's millions for sure. No.
Yeah. Like it's the idea of like Architeuthis, the modern day giant squid. For a long time that was considered a cryptid. It was a monster that the maritime folks would talk about, but we never found evidence for it until we found bodies of it. Sea serpents. Like if you look at a lot of of the old sea serpent books, one I highly suggest "In the Wake of Sea Serpents" by Bernard Hoovermans. He has a whole classifications of different types of sea serpents being seen around the world. You had the saurians, like that look like dinosaurs. You had the ones that look like giant turtles. You had the ones that look like just giant eels. Like actually, getting back to earlier, when it comes to like lake monsters, the one group of lake monsters I believe could exist are the ones that I've seen in Alaska. Canada, because Ogopogo, Igopogo, Winnepogo, all these lake monsters seen in Canada are very similar. Long eel-like creatures, 10 to 30 feet long, smooth black skin, and this is seen in almost every lake. So, what to me, that might not correlate to people misidentifying. That might actually correlate to a species that's indigenous to multiple lakes, like, and not something that, like, for instance, champ here in the United States, it's seen as a plesiosaur, very similar to like what we've seen in like the Loch Ness monster. I don't think it could be a plesiosaur because first they died out a long time ago, and second of all, there were some freshwater versions, but like I've even people bring up like, oh, it was something that was created a while ago. If you look at a lot of these lakes in North America, like the Great Lakes, for instance, they only created in the last ice age. These weren't here
Right.
millions of years. They're only here last 10, 20,000 years. So how can something truly prehistoric from the dinosaur age be in a lake that's only 20,000 years old?
Well, I just got my cue from my doc who called me. Tex, I told you guys backstage that I had to leave a little early today. So, Tex, I'm leaving you in controls. It's been a great show. Thanks for everybody for coming on in. I appreciate it. Appreciate the super chat from Keith. Ryan, man, pleasure always to see you. Yeah, I got some personal stuff I got to attend to, but I'll be back next Tuesday night with Krista, and Krista, and I'm going to have the lovely. What's her name? Oh, I forgot. I forgot her name. Christina Gomez. Christina Gomez. Go check her out. She'll be on Tuesday night. With that being said, I got to take care of this business. Love you all in chat. Ryan, great seeing you. Tex, I'll talk to you a little later. Thanks. Good night, everybody.
Of course. See you, buddy.
Well, Katie barred the door. It's me and you, Ryan. Party's on.
And now he left me with you. Now I'm scared.
So when it comes to stuff like mermaids and that type of thing, we were having a conversation the other night on the show about those kind of things. And it sounds like to me, the mermaids, the sirens, and that type of thing are I think they may have been the same thing, but I don't know what they, if it was something natural. I don't think people are seeing what they think they're seeing. I mean, it could, how many, people say that Smith's identified sea cows and that type of thing, but I don't know, man. This aquatic, the aquatic stuff, to me, if you get away from the mermaids and stuff, but like the megalodon and everything, like you said, if there's a few thousand of them, as big as and unexplored as our oceans are, You know,
They
there's
would
a
never
lot
be
of stuff that
seen.
could be out there. They're constantly finding
Yeah,
new stuff.
yeah. Like for instance, like when it comes to like oceanic cryptids and things like that, I believe the probability of them existing is a lot higher than other cryptids. But
Right.
I guess with me, I've never really put a lot of research into like the oceanic cryptids and like lake monsters and all that because that's just really not my wheelhouse. The
Right.
water's
Right.
never really been. I'm like, okay, you're big, scary, and I don't know what's underneath you. I don't like that. I'm gonna go look behind. I'm gonna look in the woods now.
All
That's
right.
just
So
how
let's.
I've
All
noticed
right.
like a lot of. I've noticed like a lot of cryptozoologists. We have our own like little specialties. I'm like, okay, lake monsters. I'll leave that to someone else. I'll go deal with
Well,
Bigfoot and all this other stuff.
let's do. What is Bigfoot your favorite cryptid?
With me, to an extent, yes. Unknown hominids, unknown primates. Dogman's also up there. But the real cryptid that got me into this wasn't Bigfoot. It was actually Thunderbirds. Thunderbirds was like the real cryptid that really got me into this field.
Let's talk about that for a little bit.
Okay. With Thunderbirds, like really, it's funny. I always tell Ken this. He always feels old when I tell him. But it's like what really got me into it was the Monster Quest episode about Thunderbirds because it's a really clear memory in my head. I was like maybe like 5 or 6 in my living room, and then I was watching Monster Quest, and it's like when remember the scenes where they were like replicate like the eyewitness testimony. You see this giant bird cross the screen, and I was like, I'm like, okay, that shouldn't exist. Then I read more into it, and I'm like, oh, there's real life monsters, and like with Thunderbirds, it's really interesting because like flying cryptids,
Yeah.
that activates a certain part of our brain. I've noticed with flying things, especially things that are large that can fly, it activates our little like monkey brain because we don't like things that can fly because that can swoop down and get us. Because it's been shown in our own fossil record, we have been hunted by aerial creatures. The Tong Child. This was an early Australopithecine that was picked up by a golden crowned eagle and fed upon in a nest. So, like these flying creatures, a lot of them it activates a very innate evolutionary part of our brains. And like for instance, like the Thunderbird, it's like to me one of the most likely version like things that can fly, most likely cryptid, because all it is a large bird. The actual species of it, we're not sure. Could it be a teraton? Because in prehistoric North America during the Pleistocene, there were giant, large vultures we called the teratons. These had a wingspan of maybe 15 to 20 feet to 15 to 20 feet. Then in South America, you had something called Argentavis. Argentavis was a giant eagle, maybe a wingspan of like 15 to 20 feet as well.
Hmm.
Maybe these thunderbirds are the same species that survived to the modern day. And a lot of these Native American cultures reference the thunderbird because they would come and bring in thunderstorms and be able to shoot lightning and all this. Know what that tells me from a modern day perspective? Those birds are riding the updrafts, the wind currents that are in front of thunderstorms. Maybe that's why we don't see them as much. Maybe these animals aren't crossing just a couple hundred miles. Maybe these animals can cross thousands of miles using these thunderstorm updrafts as like a highway across the country. Like, for instance, we have certain flaps of sightings. Like in Pennsylvania back in the 70s, we had like a bunch of Thunderbird sightings. Up in Arkansas, Oklahoma back in the 80s. Maybe these Thunderbirds are using these updrafts and these thunderstorms across the country and get to places, feed upon whatever they get, maybe deer, things like that. And that's a possibility. But then you have other flying cryptids. Like one particular flying cryptid I like to really talk about a lot is the flying humanoid phenomena. Uh, the flying humanoid phenomena, people pretty much see a human, but with wings flying around.
Right. Right.
Very akin to like what we see as like the Mothman.
Right.
And these creatures are seen around the world and around the country. One big thing is actually here in Texas. Not a lot of people realize that. Like the big bird, back in I believe it was the 70s or 80s, down in the and parts of El Paso and Brownsville. This area was in South Texas where people started seeing a large flying creature with hair, bat-like wings flying around in the sky. And people are like, okay, and they call it Big Bird because at the time Sesame Street, the giant
Right.
bird. This isn't no Big Bird from Sesame Street. This animal was known for picking up, like, even there's one story of a man and his son uh, hunting, and this creature came and picked him up and almost flew off with him. There were stories of this animal attacking people, and people have even mixed this up with other cryptids because some people have even said, thanks to the large leathery wings, maybe this was a flying pterosaur, some type of flying, living like dinosaur. But like flying cryptids to me are very interesting because it's so we get all these different like descriptions. You have the flying humanoids. You have like what we call probably like bat squatch. That's a whole cryptids being seen nowadays. You have thunderbirds. You have the Congo moto being seen in Africa. Like, it's very interesting.
So Jason McLean had a pterodactyl or what's he call it? Um,
Rhamphorhynchoid.
yeah, Ramflacto sighting.
Yes.
What do I mean? What are the possibilities of a surviving dinosaur
With me,
in your head?
in my personal opinion, my own head, the likelihood of surviving non-avian dinosaurs is very unlikely. One big thing is just the amount of time since they went extinct. 65 million years is a lot of time, especially evolutionarily. In that
Well, yeah,
time,
but when we say extinct, how do we know that they're extinct?
yes, that's true. Like Lazarus taxon, like animals not surviving. But also with the ideas of like people seeing, like, for instance, like a triceratops or like a sauropod. Well, if you look at paleontologically, species have especially large terrestrial species, have a kind of like a timer. Usually, species only exist for maybe 10 to 15 million years. So when people say like, "Oh, I think like I saw like a stegosaur or I saw like a triceratops like creature," like especially down in the Congo,
Right.
in my personal opinion, if these animals did survive into like the modern age, I don't think they would look like what we think they look like back then. They would have evolved and adapted somehow, I believe. And a lot of times they do bring up what we call anachronisms. Like when people first brought up saying like Congolese dinosaurs, they brought up tail dragging. They brought up these animals being very sluggish and like giant lizards. But we now know from paleontological records, these animals were very much not the sluggish lizards we saw back in the 60s. They
Right.
were very active. They were warm blooded like us modern mammals. Tail dragging was not a thing. Like if you look at like a lot of old like 1960s images of like T Rex, you see like being very upright, the tail drags along the ground, very much Land Before Time esque. But
Right.
then you watch Jurassic Park, that's what you would actually see if you saw a dinosaur. Is very much a horizontal back, tails in line with the head. But when people bring up a lot of these dinosaurs being seen around the world, they bring up stuff that the dinosaurs didn't really actually look like that. Like, for instance, the pterosaurs. It's a possibility pterosaurs are surviving, but if you look at pterosaurs, a lot of people bring up like the very pointed wings. Wings would have been rounded. They bring up crests. Not a lot of pterosaurs had crests. For instance, like when Jason brings up rhamphorhynchoids, rhamphorhynchoid pterosaurs died out during the Jurassic. They died out almost 200 million years ago. But with me, I'm like, okay, but people are seeing something though.
Right.
That's when you bring in more perspectives of like maybe these aren't surviving dinosaurs. Maybe these are time slips. Maybe like people have brought up ideas of like what the missing 411 phenomena, going missing for like 2 months, and then they discovered and they said no time passed.
Right.
Maybe things like that do occur. It sounds very sci-fi, but maybe time slips occur and maybe something from the past gets brought into the modern day, then maybe that's why we don't discover them or discover new bones because they go right back to where they came from. It's very much kind of a non-scientific explanation, but it's a possible explanation of why we see these modern like living dinosaurs. Is maybe they are images from the past coming into the modern day, maybe something like that. But the idea that the surviving populations of dinosaurs living on our Earth into the modern day, I don't believe that. Now, at least not my research, not with what I know or my research. It's a possibility. Maybe there's misidentification. Maybe there is aspects of it that have been caused by uh, ideas of like cultural, like for instance, like cultural mixing. Like when Europeans first entered Africa during the age of imperialism, it was very much the dark continent. It was a primordial jungle. So they literally walked in expecting to see dinosaurs, expecting to see something from a previous age, and these are the stories we got back. Like for instance, the Cat's Eye Rex. That's actually a cryptid that I've been doing a lot of research into recently. It's a supposedly a theropod that was seen during in Kenya back in the early 1900s. Only one or two people saw this creature ever, and only from one eyewitness. And but a lot of times people don't realize back then a lot of these newspapers would create stories like this in order to get higher sales, or people would back then think honor was a big thing back in the 1900s and 1800s. Oh, I didn't go and hunt a rhino. The reason I didn't get a rhino is because a T Rex came and got it, and because certain places were very much wilderness, they would possibly be believable. Not a lot of people realize when Thomas Jefferson sent Lewis and Clark westward in here in the United States, he told them to look out for mammoths, saber-toothed cats, and giant ground sloths. When you go into a new area, you kind of expect to see something from a previous age, something prehistoric. And if you have a belief set, that creates your own reality.
So we got about 15 minutes left here. Um, what? Let's go over what your new book is going to be about, and take a deep dive into that.
Of course, the one I'm currently working on, trying to get published, hopefully later this year, Beyond Bigfoot, the other unrecognized primates of North America. I bring up three particular creatures: the gugwe, the North American ape, and the devil monkey. And I bring up, like, for instance, we've had, like, I've talked to Duke Sullivan before about the gugwe, how people see a Bigfoot with a more prognatic face, very much a baboon like face. I bring up sightings, possible explanations of it, but then I go into NAPES, North American apes. Lauren Coleman himself, very famous cryptozoologist, one of the like granddaddies of cryptozoology, came up with the term nape back in the 60s. People were seeing Bigfoot-like prints, but with a divergent big toe. And people were referencing seeing something that was Bigfoot-like, but it could knuckle rock, and that looked like kind of like a giant chimp. So these North American apes, he speculated they were surviving Dryopithecines, which were a possibility. I kind of bring that up in my own book. I bring up my own hypothesis on what these creatures are. But the one cryptid I get really into is the devil monkey. Like I know you've talked about the devil monkey before, Tex. Like even here in Texas, we've had sightings of people describe giant baboons that look truly ferocious.
Right.
And I bring up people seeing these animals. Look, I personally believe the devil monkey is truly an indigenous species. I think it's a primate that survived here in North America and that has what we call a ghost lineage. We haven't found any of its like fossil record, but it could have survived here in North America because if you look at prehistoric North America, we had elephants like mastodon, we had giant ground sloths, we had a bunch of ungulates, we had giant big cats, packs of like wolves, dire wolves, we had short-faced bear, and very open country, very much like what we see in modern day Africa. And what does modern day Africa have? Baboons. And what is a devil monkey described as? A baboon, but much larger. So we know about Dinopithecus. Dinopithecus was a baboon found in Africa that was about 5 foot tall at the shoulder. A truly horrific sight if you saw this in person.
Oh
So
yeah,
what?
absolutely.
Yeah. So what if these devil monkeys are a primate that convergently evolved to become baboon-like here in North America because of the very similar environment North America had to modern-day Africa? That's a possibility I bring up, and then I bring up like the gugwe. If you look at the gugwe, it's very similar to the devil monkey. It has 3 toes, very prognatic, have very baboon-like face, very much violent and very, very territorial, like the baboon. What if during prehistory, it kind of goes hand in hand with Sasquatch and prehistory as well. The modern day Bigfoot moved into North America, and there was already a surviving species of primate here, modern day devil monkey. What if that competition made a new species to form with the gugwe? Maybe these gugwees are kind of like convergently evolved to become very Bigfoot like. They're more solitary, they're more violent. There's stories of gugwees pushing away Bigfoot species on certain areas. There's stories of them trying to like avoid each other. So what if all these primates lived alongside each other and kind of compete with each other? But I also bring up like, okay, what's the likelihood of all of it? Like, uh, if we look at it, okay, we have Bigfoot here in North America. And then we're saying that there's 3 other whole species of primates in an area where there's no indigenous primates. Doesn't sounds kind of fishy. So I bring up like the possibilities of maybe a lot of these are maybe misidentifications, maybe they are just local legends, and maybe if they are a species, maybe how would they coexist with each other?
Right.
How do they make sure they don't compete each other to extinction? And how can we make sure we discover these species in the future?
Yeah, man. I'll tell you what. And I've told you this before, and I've told a lot of other people. You know, you're just a wealth of knowledge, and again, it's every time you know we spend time together. You know, we see conferences and stuff like that, and even go out in the field there every once in a while, and we have such fantastic conversations. And the amount of research that you've poured into these 3 books is just, to me, it's mind blowing because I damn sure ain't done it. And in fact, I'm just dipping my toes into the whole book thing. But how old were you when you started putting your first book together?
I was actually in high school. I was
Oh wow,
maybe 18 because my
yeah,
first book, really, what it was kind of like it's like the idea like you have all the stuff in your brain and you don't want to forget it. So I just
right,
started writing all the stuff down. Like, okay, it was almost like a little cryptid journal I kept for myself. And I was like, wait, a lot of stuff no one talks about.
yeah,
A lot of these ideas I've never heard anyone say. So I started like compiling it into like a more book. And then I was like, you know what if I publish this? What if I get this published and that kind of helps me get my name out there? And this is like my starting point into the actual field. So actually, it was COVID. When COVID hit, I started like editing it, getting it all put together, knowing how to like format it. I sent it to a publisher, and they're like, "Yeah, we would love to publish it." And then that really got me into the world of cryptozoology and where I am now. Like, it's funny when I look at it. Like, I got into this. I've been into this field for since I was a little kid. But really being in it, like going to conferences, writing the books, doing the research, I've only really been doing it since like 2021. And it's
right,
2024 now, and it's like the people I saw, I still look up to, but I like that were my heroes, like Lowen Coleman, Ken Gerhard, Lyle Blackburn. I work with them now. Like
yeah,
Lowen Coleman, for instance, is writing my forward writer for my third book, and that's a something that I can't even get over sometimes.
mm,
geez, the guy I looked that was my hero is now writing my forward. Ken Gerhard was a hero to me as a kid. Now I work with him. And actually, bringing up King Gerhard, there's one thing I do want to bring up. See if I want to bring up to you guys right here is if anyone here is local to Texas, I the Symposium of the Strange. It's a something I do want to try to promote here too. It's an event that I'm putting on down here in San Antonio.
Yeah, we talked about that.
Yeah.
On the way back from the last conference, actually.
Yeah, and I did want to bring up that we do have the date and all that for today. If anyone here is interested, of course, interested in Bigfoot, stuff like that, the first event will be happening July 31st down in San Antonio. It'll be at 6 o'clock. It'll be in a place called Magic Time Machine. It's a small little venue, fit maybe 100 people at most. We're going to have myself speaking, Ken Gerhard, and Rob Nichols of Bear County Bigfoot. And it's all put on by our good friend Chris Jordan. Me and him are really like putting it on, trying to organize it. And it's going to be like hopefully a monthly series. We want to try to, the first event is, of course, Bigfoot in Texas. But we want to do UFOs, paranormal, different types of cryptids, all that type of stuff. And hopefully we're going to try to do it every last Wednesday of the month. So if anyone's interested in stuff like that, to come meet authors, come meet the researchers, really see the people that actually do the work. Symposium of Strange will hopefully be the future event for that for this field.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah,
I really am.
and of course, in the future, maybe even a little Texas Front Porch month, maybe with you guys. I would love to have you guys come out.
No, we'll definitely do that. Make our way down there for sure. There's you got me and Jason and Monica. I mean, we're all here in Texas. So, yeah.
It's funny when you realize how many people in this field live in Texas.
I know, right? We're doing something right.
It's like, why do we have so many people here? Like literally, Ken lives in the same town as me. We have Lyle Blackburn here. We have like you guys up there. I'm like, it's funny. Texas really is a place full of monsters.
Yeah.
Monsters and
true.
monster owners.
That is true. Well, Brian, man, I really appreciate you coming on today, and I know Rob does too. And we need to get you after the conference because Ryan's going to be at the Alabama Bigfoot conference up there too. So, you'll come up there and you get to meet him and purchase his books, but pick his brain. But we're going to get out of here. And Ryan, thanks again, man. You take care of yourself.
Of course.
Thanks.
That's great being here.
Thanks everybody for joining us. You can find where we can find your books at, Ryan.
They are available on Amazon, as well as my second book. It was published by David Weatherly's company, Area Lights. If you look up Area Light Publishing, you'll be able to find my second book. My first book, Cryptids of the World, you can be able to find that on Amazon. And then if anyone's interested in Symposium of the Strange, that will be available if you look on Facebook and look up Symposium of the Strange. It'll send you guys to our website. We also have an Eventbrite up with the tickets available. We are selling $5 kids tickets, $10 adult. We are also offering a VIP ticket. VIP tickets are $30 each, but you get a signed poster with all the speakers signing it and a free book from one of the speakers signed by the author.
Don't get a flyer put together. Send it to them and we can post it.
Of course.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Y'all have a good day and stay safe out there. And I'll see you tonight with Monica. We'll talk to y'all later. Bye.